We made it to the big time, huh? I don't know, but this is pretty cool. We rarely have an opportunity to spend time together publicly like this. So I'm really excited. And again, I just appreciate you being willing to make our conversations public versus private. And I think you have provided a great opportunity through the creation of this book, right? This powerful book that you have created called the Black Power Scorecard. And when I initially read it, I just thought that it was just a great blueprint for us as a people to really think more strategically about how we move forward collectively as a family. Before I also get started, I also want to just thank everyone that has logged in to participate in this fireside chat and conversation. I know these are extremely difficult times for people who believe in freedom and that believe in justice. And I want you to know that we're there with you, fighting alongside you every step of the way. And regardless of what is said or what is told to you, we will win if we choose to stick together. And regardless of whether they say it is our imagination or not, um, anti-blackness is real, and we must work collectively again to not only heal our communities, but also through our healing, heal the community, our national community and our regional communities as well. So um, let me jump in. I want to make sure that we jump in so we can
Well,
provide not
before
only an
before
opportunity.
we before we begin, I just want I can't I was trying to remember when we met because
Oh my.
yeah, and because when I got to know you, I was like, man, who's this brother doing this powerful work around
Well,
justice, equity, and all?
it was actually the first time we met was in Montgomery, Alabama. And we had an opportunity to do a panel together
That's right.
in Montgomery. And again, it's just something about just having an opportunity to engage in conversation with you in that environment, in a place that was so critical to the Southern Freedom Movement. And that's when we first met. We
That's
first
right.
met doing a panel.
That's right.
And and you've been an inspiration to me ever since.
Yeah, and we have, and then once you meet someone, I've seen you everywhere. I mean, literally bumping into each other in airports and
Yeah,
so it's just great to know you, and I applaud your work and effort. So I want to also just make sure you get all the flowers because I do a lot of writing, I do a lot of research, and then there are practitioners that are doing the work. And so I just want to give a shout out to you and everybody on the call. So I'm looking at some of the names. I'm like, oh, these are powerful people out there that's tuned in. So you're commanding a great stage as well. So thank you for the
that means a lot, and we still got work to do, my brother. So we
yes,
just got to keep pressing forward. And again, thank you. So let's jump in. And again, this is again a conversation amongst friends. So if people are looking for a formal conversation where all of the verbs are conjugated and all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, this is the wrong conversation. We wanted to create through our efforts at PSC and through Just Communities, which you'll learn a little bit about if you're not aware of Just Communities, to provide real conversation because that is what I believe we need right now. So, talk a little bit about what inspired you to write the book, Andre, and if you don't mind, talk a little bit how that is also connected to the Black Progress Index, because I think it's important for
yeah.
folks to be aware of both, as they kind of read the book and hopefully it'll guide their work moving forward as well.
I was inspired, like a lot of folks, of the events of 2020, in the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others. But certainly the summer of 2020, the summer of uprising, was significant, and people rallied around the slogan Black Lives Matter. And before then, years even before then, people even questioned should that even be a slogan. And they would say it's all lives matter, Black Lives Matter too. Um, there were all kind of swirling thoughts on the phrase. But for me, I saw a research question. Black Lives Matter translated for me into what are the most important factors on life itself.
Mm,
And at the time, so much emphasis was placed on the criminal justice system and policing. And while that's certainly important, I wanted to look at what enabled people to live. And just very two different approaches. One looks at a very narrow set of levers. If you're looking at what harms us, you're talking about a narrower set of levers. But when you ask what enables us to thrive, that opens up a whole new door into getting the things that we want and need ultimately, not
mm,
necessarily fighting for the things we're against. And so from there, I talked this about doing a research project around it. And as you mentioned, the project came to be about the Black Progress Index, which was on partnership with the NAACP, where we look for the most important factors on life expectancy and looked at the places where Black people are living the longest. And to really sum it up as much as possible, we used a machine learning algorithm, lasso regression, to sift through thousands of variables, dozens of data sets. This machine learning algorithm, Lasso, allows you to go through all these variables and weight them or rank them against a dependent variable, which was life expectancy. So we got the most important positive and negative factors on life expectancy. And we'll talk about some of them certainly, but um, that was the Black Progress Index, and people can go Google Black Progress Index. Hopefully, after we have our
yep.
discussion, um, and you can type in any county or metro area and find those factors in those areas. So you can type in Atlanta, Memphis, Pittsburgh, whatever, and or Allegheny County or whatever county you're in, and look at the factors that matter most. Um, and then after I did that, I there were so many thoughts around these things that I put these thoughts in a book because I just didn't want to leave it at here are the cities that where Black people live over 80. And there are lots of them. To be clear, one of the goals of the book is to show that Black people are thriving. Too often, all we show is the disparity. And most people know me through my work on housing devaluation, where we found that homes in Black neighborhoods are underpriced by 23%, 48,000 per home cumulatively, with about 156 billion lost equity. But the point of that study, while it's had a profound impact on the housing market, I just wanted to really show that homes are much more valuable than they are priced, that we are much more valuable than we are priced. And
Yeah,
when you
and
get
I
a
think,
sense
or
of,
not to cut you off. Go ahead. I'm sorry, brother.
go ahead. No,
No, I was just saying that, the from my perspective, the journey towards Black Power must first begin with our deep belief that we deserve it,
that's right.
right? And
That's right.
that at the end of the day, it is not just about us being resilient, right? It's not just about us surviving. It's about us thriving, right?
That's right.
As a people. And that's one of the reasons why I was really encouraged by this book because at the end of the day, we have to say to ourselves, right, that we demand change, and not just we demand change, because it'll make it better for us as a community, but it'll make us better. It'll make our communities better. It'll make our nation better. And so, we have to first acknowledge that. The other thing too that I really, really appreciated about the book, and we can, and if you don't mind weaving kind of your own idea and definitions of what power and Black power are,
Yeah.
is I really also appreciated you communicating what it is not,
Right.
right? So I mean, we talk a lot about, and I think it's the fallacies that are connected to our liberation that continuously minimizes our ability to be free, right? So, for example, you talked a lot about how this analogy of Jay-Z about what's better than one billionaire, two billionaires. So, this assumption that we're going to billionaire our way into freedom, right?
Right.
Is one of the fallacies that you lifted up. And then also you talked a lot about the fallacy around financial education, and also just having a lot of entrepreneurs, that will make us free, right? And so I
Right.
just wanted you to talk about, in your kind of talking about this question of, Black power, and what is it. I thought it was powerful for you to really stand out on the front and in the beginning, and really communicate what it is not, because there's a lot we have to unlearn in this
Yeah.
process, and not just learn, right? So please, if you don't mind.
I'll tell a story before the Jay-Z quote. I was invited to a White House event, and really I keep an arm's length relationship with every White House because I'm going to critique whether Democrat, Republican, I'm going to critique. So I don't go to the parties. I'll go to like policy things. I don't go to the the outwardly political thing. But I got invited, and I told someone I'm not going to go. And I remember looking on Instagram that we were literally swag surfing on the White House lawn. And I was going like, wow, that is not the move. Nor is, and I mentioned this in the book, how many Grammys Beyonce wins, turning the Little Mermaid black.
Mm.
All these things aren't power,
Right.
right? But the number one thing that we're up against right now is this notion that individual exceptionalism
That's right.
is a sign of power. And I
Right.
and I and I use Jay-Z as a straw man in this regard. I have nothing against Jay-Z personally. I don't know him, but the line, "What's better than 1 billionaire?" he asks, and then he responds to his own question too, especially if they're the same hue as you, and you get a sense that he could be talking about his wife, he could be talking about just more black billionaires in general, but he misses a very important part of that um um it's never been about how much you make. It's always been about the means of production. And so descendants of the enslaved know that you can exploit people to make a billion. That's how much of the wealth in this country has been made, and particularly in the music industry, where shady contracts, no health care, all kind of shenanigans, as we've seen in recent weeks, that are occurring en route to a billion. No, no, we would never say what's better than one black slave owner to
Right. Exactly. An overseer
right
too, right?
to
you
know.
know you know and
So
this
for
question
me,
of yeah and this question of like individualism, and really, to be completely transparent, Black capitalism, right,
yeah,
is a challenge, I think, that we have in the Black community, because individualism has never worked for us as a people.
no, never,
And that if we our economics has to be communal, right? It has to be collective. It has to be not just about how can we create the new Michael Jordan, the new Oprah Winfrey, the new Jay-Z. I mean, we honor them for their ability to navigate through this extractive economy that is centered in white oppression, but at the same time, how do you grow communities that
Yeah.
are free and not just individuals? And I think this question of, and I'm gonna give it back to you, this question of black capitalism versus black freedom, right? You know, we will never really truly buy our way into freedom, right? Is a question that is really, really important. And so I just give it back to you to kind of
Yeah.
share some more of your thoughts.
Yeah, I in a very real sense that if you're using economic measures, you're never going to look at who appears on the Forbes list. You're going to look at median wealth of a geographic area to establish power. And if you're going to use median wealth, then you're going to have to look at home ownership, not just for you,
Right,
but for the community. You're going to have to look at business development, not just for you, but for the entire community. You're going to have to look at education, not just if you can get your kid to a great private school, but can everyone in the community get access to a great school?
right.
Very different concepts. And this is just the practical reality. Our wealth profiles are as such where we have to work cooperatively. That even I live in Prince George's County, and if there's a Wakanda in the United States, it's the DMV where the outcomes are generally robust. But even here, with one swipe of the pen, in this administration, you cut thousands of jobs, black
Yes.
jobs, right? The federal workers, the contractors, with one swipe of the pen. And so we got to really change our thinking around, is this about me or is this about us? And we need approaches that focus on the us. And I mean, we have this battle throughout time. We've always had these battles, but now we are the I've we are the most individualistic I've seen in some time, and some of it is because of this cell phones and like a selfie culture almost, um, where we're just consumed.
I call it the attention economy, right?
Yeah,
Like this, like we have an economy that's built on attention, whether it's good attention or bad attention, and it's harming us as Black people. The other key thing is, because you know me, we love to have real talk conversations. It's also not about our power or wealth is not connected at all to our proximity to white people, right?
yeah,
Like this conversation about, so when we talk about the gaps in wealth, we're not just talking about working to try to get us as close to white people as we can as it relates to wealth and success. We and just to be completely honest, we've seen how that is working out now for immigrant communities that thought that their safety was predicated on their proximity to whiteness. Now, as we deal with these challenges that we face around immigration and around the reemergence of fascism in America, right? So again, like it's about our own. It's about our greatest competition is ourselves, right? And how do we continue to grow an economy? Because as you know through the research that you're doing, Andre, the statistics are showing that the white community that they are faltering in many indicators. So for us, it's not about getting close to them. It's about actually surpassing them in ways that are consistent with our
yeah.
community. So, definitely wanted you to share your thoughts
You
on that
know,
as well.
I I don't even so the way we did the Black Progress Index, we did not compare black to white.
That's right.
We
That's right. And it's
compared.
important for you to say that because some people do.
That's
You
right. And it's the reason being is you stated when you only look black compared to white, you create this sort of psychological sort of trap of saying the only way there can be justice if black people catch up to white people. And then there's this, and also it just becomes a very fatalistic sort of pattern that only we only look at our downfall. And And when you also look at disparity, it masks the real growth that is happening in communities all across the country. And one of the things I will never do, I will never discount the people who are actually making gains. Yes, there are disparities. It's real. Those are, but when if you only look at the disparity and you don't see the growth, then you're going to deny people the investments who are doing great work and making gains. So I only compare black people to black people, and that way you can see, oh, this area is, black folks are making changes in housing and business development and education and environment. Oh, this area is struggling. What did that area do? And in many cases, and what I try to do in the book, I sprinkle in people and actions
Yes.
that sparked some change or can be considered solutions. So for me, it is all about assuming that black people are making a difference because it's real, and assuming that we don't have to replicate nonsense like
Right.
violent means to get ahead.
Right.
That is just not good for anyone.
That's right.
But it's certainly not part of our history and our legacy, particularly here in the United States.
And I would submit to you, brother, that America, black people have made the difference in
Right.
America, not a difference.
That's right.
As a result of us being used to grow this economy, our influence on culture, our influence on democracy. Black people have not only made a difference, but we have made the difference.
Hmm.
And I think that, as we enter into this new era, we have to hold on to that truth because people will be working hard to take that away from us. Other quick thing is, I mean, there's so much we can talk about, and I want to try to get to as much as we can. The other thing that I was really excited about was the connection that you made with some things that people don't really think about in health, right?
Yeah.
Like home ownership, right?
Hmm.
That people are more healthy usually when they own a home, or the effects of wealth and health. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about how, our black power and accumulating black power is not just about material things or financial freedom. It's about our health. It's good power. Black power is good for our health. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I always want to give like the North Star. What are we really fighting for at the end of the day? We want to live good, long lives. We want to have well-being and longevity in our lives. You know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, "Longevity has its place." We know that those were some of his final words on this earth. And it does have its place. It's the ultimate place. I really believe that, no, I know we can create policies where people can live well into their 80s. This is not this is not like some pie in the sky type of thing. No, we can create the policies that gives people longevity. And they're right in front of us. And we don't have to wait generations to do it. One of the misgivings with the closing the wealth gap language is it almost says that we have to close it in order for us to get the things we need to just live long. No, no, no. We should have, every locale should have a certain percentage of people owning a home. Not, I didn't say everyone has to own a home, but when when you live in a community where 70% of the community owns a home, guess what? People in that community, whether they're renting or owning, they live longer. When you live in a community when education is robust, everybody lives longer. When you live in a community, and this was surprising for me, where business ownership is high. I mean, but the causal pathway there is that when the conditions are good for on Main Street in the commercial corridors, it's also conducive for health. So there's lots of little things. I'll share one um, controversial thing. There's two controversial chapters. It's not really chapters, two controversial findings that I get a lot of questions around. One is around the religion stat that found that the share of religious adherents, church members, when it's higher, life expectancy is lower.
Hmm.
Now, I want to explain before somebody throws the Bible through the screen that what that generally means is that people are going into church suffering. That we
Right.
see we
Exactly.
see that when there's a lot of church membership, there's also a less public and private investment, and churches are stepping in to serve, and so people are going into church suffering. So that
Yeah,
that gets
my pastor used to say that the church is a hospital,
that's
right?
right.
That the
That's
church
right.
is supposed to be filled with sick people
Yeah.
who want to be healed. And so it made perfect sense to me.
Yeah. And then the other piece, and we might talk about this a little bit later at length, but we cannot avoid conversations around family. Now, what I don't do, we are not the blame of marriage rates in this country. I just want to be clear about that. And what's what I say in the book, that it's the we shouldn't look to marriage as solving societal ills. When you fix the preconditions of of marriage, meaning when education is good, when home ownership is up, when wealth is up, guess what? Relationships are just fine. Like when you control for wealth, these marriage rates rise, and I'm not endorsing marriage, but when when you control for wealth, meaning when you look apples to apples of people with wealth, their marriage rates are a lot higher. But when you look at places where there's higher incarceration rates, lower education, all these different things, um, you have worse marital outcomes. So, what I say is when you build healthy communities, you get healthier relationships, not the other way around. So, all these podcasts where people are talking what black men and black women aren't bringing to the table. No, when black men and black women start working on sexism and racism, we'll be just fine. It's a romantic act. I say that working on these things, wage inequality for women in particular, is something we all need to work on. The criminal justice system, all need to work on. And when we deal with those issues, relationships come, and we get in these gender wars, and it's like, what are we talking?
Yeah, and I think, and again, I mean, I think that in this particular case, as it relates to Black Power, we also have to acknowledge the fact that, the power structure, the white worldview, in particular, when Africans came over here, as slaves, the first thing that they did was break up families, right?
That's
They,
right.
they broke up men and women, right, in order to take the humanity and the connection that African people had to each other, right? And so they knew that there was power, the power of connection, the power of community, right? And
That's
and
right.
one of the first things that they did in order to break that up was to break up families, right? And so, while definitely I don't think that this conversation is about, because I think that is where the right gets it wrong, because they, in my opinion, are intellectually slow to just assume that marriage is the silver bullet.
Right.
Everything will change in the Black community if people just got married. No.
No.
If you change the things that are keeping people from getting married, then and the things that keep people from developing healthy relationships, removing the things that create trauma, generational trauma, then there may be an opportunity to create the type of communities that will make communities, and Black people in particular, more healthy. And so again, there is power in community.
That's
However
right.
you define that is up to you. But I will also say that we know that that has been one of the things that the other side has worked very hard to destroy, since we came over here as enslaved people at that moment in time in history. Um, the main thing was to break up our community. So we have to understand and ask ourselves the same way about democracy. You know, if our vote didn't matter, why do they work so hard to keep us from voting? It's the same
That's
thing
right.
about community. If our community was not as powerful as it is, why do they work so hard to try to, disqualify it and break it up? So
And we can't, and I want to double down on this. We cannot allow other people to have or set the frame of what is going on in our relationships.
that's right.
Like, and some people, I'll be very honest that there was a progressive crowd that kind of went after that chapter because they basically said you're endorsing heterosexual relationships, blah. And and I was like, one, the data when you're talking about the data says that the share of children not living with their father is a negative predictor of life expectancy. We do know this is absolutely true that black men actually spend as much time with their children as other men, but they're twice as likely not to live with their children, which cuts into income, which is one of the top predictors of life expectancy. So living separately, you there's a loss of material wealth that it's hard to make up for. And then we won't even talk about the criminal justice system on that. But um, you know, there was a reaction because if for many people, if you even start talking about family, it's like, oh, you can't talk about family because you're going to blame black women or you're going to endorse marriage, which is Christian. And I was like, look, one, you're talking to somebody who mainly talks about economics. One, this is where I am biased. Marriage is an economic construct as well. I mean, it is
Hmm.
it is other thing. I mean, it is an economic construct. I mean, rooted in religion, no question. Uh, but um, we can't not have these conversations because our communities are having these conversations. And so I'm not going to just cede these conversations to a crowd that has no intention on empowering black families. No intention. In fact, like you said, their intention is to divide. But so I'm just not going to allow that. I'm going to have these conversations. It's about having it the right way. But to avoid conversation on family is ridiculous.
Yeah, and again, in my opinion, there is no such thing as uh, a Republican truth or a Democratic truth, right? The
Right.
truth is a truth. It doesn't care who tells it, right?
Right.
That,
Right.
like the old folks used to say. And so, if we're serious about focusing on the truth, then I think both sides have to be willing to understand where the truth is and how we can find ways to move forward, not just for so one particular party can benefit from us, but so we can benefit as a community. A couple of other things that I wanted to talk about, which was really powerful in my opinion, um, about education.
Yeah.
And I don't want us to run out of time. I want to create some room for some question and answers. But this is really powerful to me when you said this. An attack on black education is an attack on black wealth. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
You did a great there was a great chapter on education, and I'm not going to be able to do it justice, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, from a number of fronts. And you said this earlier. I one education doesn't predict for wealth. Wealth predicts for education. Just so we have all these financial literacy programs, and I'm not against financial literacy programs, but it's not the reason why we're poor. education is not the reason why we're poor.
1 + 1 = 1. It doesn't matter how you count it, right? I mean, you're better than me. I'm kind of tired. I'm getting tired of financial literacy.
Right.
I feel like we continue to blame the oppressed for their conditions, and not really positioning people to really. The easiest thing that people can power can do, and you didn't say it, I did, was to invest in these literacy programs that aren't doing anything to change the system. They're just positioning people to continuously blame themselves for not saving enough. And again, I'm getting tired of them now.
Tired.
But not. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, but I mean, I'm as frustrated with you with these things, and then but here's the real: people learn very fast when they have an asset. When they guess how the education rises real quick when you have home ownership, and so the emphasis needs to be on the wealth building. And then this is the other thing: understand that schools and universities are major economic sources. They are major economic hubs. They hire people, they give people benefits, the contracts that are let out, everything from the meals to the buses to the curriculum, all that is money. And so when you see these attacks on Black education, guess what comes right after? A rating of the budgets. And so for me, this chapter, it's called Schools as Communities. Because I also say this, we need to think about the educational environment of the community, not just what happens in the school. Because this is what happens all the time. If we could only fix the schools, everything will be all right. And then they're denying transportation, lowering wages, all these things while we are just fixing the schools. No, this is about uplifting the entire community. And I do offer up solutions. Brother by the name of Calvin Mackey. I know some of you know him out there. He has this thing called STEM NOLA, where he has STEM activities on the weekends for kids. Thousands of kids come to the stadiums and they work on these educational activities. So things that are occurring outside of the school, reinforcing what they learn in school. But here's the thing: he also is an owner of an energy company. He's doing all this stuff, place-based investments. So it's not just about upskilling. It's about empowering and enriching the communities in which
Mhm.
those skills are being attained. So you can't separate the two. So for me, we've got to embrace this idea that education doesn't predict for wealth. Wealth predicts for education. When we empower ourselves with assets, the education will come. But make no mistake, these attacks on education is really going for the money.
Right.
Let's be clear about that.
And like you said before, I mean, I think there's a difference between education and knowledge,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And I think that we need more knowledgeable communities,
that's
right?
right.
That understand the systems that are perpetuating itself in our communities in a consistent manner through public policy and the cultural warfare, right? And at the same time learn from our ancestors. That's why the question about history is so critical and important in terms of us understanding how we got over, right? In these difficult times in the past, and at the same time, honor our institutions of higher learning. I'm a product of Morehouse College, and HBCUs, and how important they are, not just in the past, but in the future, especially in light of this environment that we're in. So this question about education and knowledge, and also, as we talked about before, unlearning, right? Some of the things that are minimizing our ability to be free, I think is really, really important. Two other quick things that I wanted to touch on, and because I want to create room for Q&A. One is I can't talk about education and what we're talking about, but also, and you talk a little bit about this throughout the book, the importance of civic education,
Oh
right?
yeah,
The importance of people learning about how to shape the systems and influence the systems that are harming them. And so, and so you also talked a lot about these places where we can learn from our history, like Brian Stevenson's
Yeah.
museum that EJI did, and other places where the lessons are found if we just are willing to look backwards and learn from our ancestors. I'm conflating some things, but
Yeah.
I wanted to just kind of create a special place for our ancestors, and also the importance of civic education, before we go into Q&A.
And this is why I know I'm a former educator, actually current educator. I still have a professorate, but I say this all the time: know the difference between knowledge and training. Like we have been trained to not understand our history, not understand where we came from, and not understand the levers of power we need to pull to sustain ourselves. The Black Power Scorecard is largely about let's 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 create some priorities now. We can't be talking about changing the Little Mermaid black. That's not going to get us anywhere.
No, I don't think so.
No, like if we're not talking about home ownership, business ownership, families, safety, like there's some very basic things, and we all know that they're very basic things, education. But I just wanted to put the numbers to it to say,
Right.
look, if you don't do these things, you literally don't live long. So, or if we do these things, hey, there will be racism, but you'll still live to 83.
That's right.
Like
That's right.
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Because
So
we can't fight if we're not alive, right?
that's
And
exactly
so
right.
and so, living is one of the important pieces of our struggle. If we're not around long enough to fight, then we won't be in a position to free ourselves. Two other quick things, and I'm because we have something to talk about in the end. I have two questions, but two other quick things that I wanted to talk about, at least for the folks that haven't read the book, to hopefully to encourage them to purchase the book, is one, this piece around the relationship between people and places, right? And in particular, the history of environmental injustice and its effect, and as well as housing policies, and just policies and domestic policies in general, but in particular housing and transportation and community development policies, and its effect on the livelihood of Black communities, right? And how not only has created very difficult times for Black folks because of housing challenges and wealth accumulation challenges, and challenges associated with growing wealth through entrepreneurship, but it's also made us sick, right?
That's right.
In many ways, because of that environment, because of the history of highways and brownfields and all of these other things, right? So, a Black power agenda can't happen without connecting it to both places and people.
That's
Eh, you
exactly right.
know, and
And
so go ahead,
yeah,
Andre.
and I always want to give shout out because there's a lot of talk and rightfully so around climate. But remember, some of the founding fathers and mothers of the environmental justice movement are Black
That's right.
because where we live is not by accident. It's not accidental. There were transportation and housing policies, in particular, I should say housing and transportation policies, that determined where a large sum of us are living. People forget this. For most of America's history, it was legal to segregate, to discriminate against Black people. So where we live is not really about choice. And where we live are in places that are most vulnerable to industrial and climate risk. I
Right.
mean, I lived in New Orleans for 14 years. Um, Not that far away, you have Cancer Alley, where we have a history of polluting um, in areas that we've zoned for Black people to live. And so, one of the things I do in the closing chapter around reparations, I tie it to in the environmental justice movement because what is less controversial is that we know that Black people are living and dying in areas right now,
That's
not
right.
not our ancestors.
That's
And
right.
what I mean, I believe in reparations from lost wages and benefits and all that from from the past. But we also have people who are dying right now
That's right.
and deserve reparations.
That's right.
So, uh, we need to like embrace. And so environment is one of the top negative, or air pollution is one of the top negative correlates of life expectancy. And guess where we live? We live in a lot of toxic areas. And if it's not air, it's water. I can go on. Flint, Jackson, parts of, I mean, Midwest, where there's failing infrastructure, guess where we're living.
That's
So
right.
so for me, it is important that we tie this negative correlate of the environment with our movements, and we always have, but it needs more support. We need more support from the broader community.
And I also think that it's really, really important for us to never forget. And at PSC, we do a lot of work around climate justice, a
Yes,
lot of work around energy equity, and of course the work that we're doing through Just Communities, which is this whole global initiative to really try to realize the beloved community in real time from a place-based perspective. We can't understand or forget the connection between the enslavement of black people and the extraction of black labor and the extraction of fossil fuels.
that's
Right?
right.
It is two sides of the same coin.
That's
It is all connected, right? And so I think why I really appreciated you talking about reparations, and not just restitution. We can talk for an hour about that, but reparations, and the challenges that we're facing around environmental injustice. Two other quick questions, and then I'm gonna take a step back and create space for questions. Well, actually, trying to see how I want to do this. I know that we have a brief presentation that we want to provide that commercial about Just Communities, and then we'll go back to Q&A. Hopefully, if people will be willing to stick around. Um, Two quick questions. So, in Atlanta, where we are at PSC, and I will go back with you about who's been called Wakanda the most between Prince George's County and Atlanta, and neither of them are Wakanda. Let me be
Right,
clear.
right. That's right.
Let me be very, very clear about that. Um, um, One of the challenges that we do have, and this may be similar in Prince George's County, is the challenge around classism, right? We have these
Yeah,
challenges where we have a lot of affluent Black folks who are moving into the city. Some of them were from Atlanta, but a lot of the resources and opportunities that have come to Atlanta haven't benefited working class Black folks, poor Black folks in the way that it should, and that's created some tension, right, between affluent Black folks in Atlanta and working class Black folks. Of course, you've seen the statistic about the lack of economic mobility for poor Black kids in Atlanta, and income inequality problems. So we have issues. With that being said, one of the things that I also appreciate about the book is, looking at what are those opportunities for solidarity across class, right? So from your perspective, within the context of the scorecard, there are some areas, like for example, you talk a lot about labor organizing, right? And that is being an approach to for wage for wage equity. And we talked about environmental injustice, or other challenges. Where are some intersectional opportunities for collaboration amongst the various classes that are in the Black community that could maybe serve as the glue for us to come together.
I saw a comment. Someone asked, "Can I talk about Lanier Richardson's Buy Back the Block initiatives?" I think that's one of the things that I'm excited about, and I'm going to be writing about in more in the near future. Is that the SEC approved these crowdfunding platforms for as little as $1,000, regular people can invest or co-own a development, and this is something that you know and theoretically, Magic Johnson did some of that, but 80% of all commercial real estate is owned by 1% of the top earners.
Hmm.
80%. And so I say this all the time. We really do need to buy back the block, but we
Right,
need to buy back the block. Not a single developer. Yes,
right,
um, I mean, because of wealth, we do need some of our wealthier people to be the principal on these acquisitions, but we need to invite community members in to have a share of that acquisition. And so Lanier Richardson is doing a lot of this good work all across the country, where he's purchasing these moribund strip malls and getting local residents to get equity shares in the institution. Another thing, I cannot say this enough. This takes some backbone on the part of elected officials, and we also need to pressure and elect people in ways that make sense. Look, Maynard Jackson, which we all reference, did the right thing. When there is a opportunity to develop an airport, a stadium, some kind of major project, this is where wealth is developed. But it can't now. We do have enough black wealth where it can only go to that small community.
right.
Like, no, we gotta
Got to
open it
spread
up.
the peanut butter. Got to spread it.
Right. And this is where we need to do better. You know, there have been many opportunities for us to expand number of employer firms, contractors. We have the suppliers. O- it's time for us, whenever there is a project online, to go out and find people who aren't regularly named on a deal. And that's just about leveraging our electeds, because we're not going to nonprofit our way out of these problems.
That's
We
right.
do need we need government and corporate America to distribute resources. And I mean, and it goes without saying, I didn't have a chapter on it, but tax policy is key. We also need wealthy people to pay their fair share in taxes. I can't stand every Christmas star, oh, I'm going to pay some layaway bills. No, like, and they get props. Oh, look what this person did. He paid all these layaway. Now, you could have paid your taxes, brother.
Yeah, it's charity. Yeah, I mean, it's charity and not change, right?
Yeah, right,
And I think that that is the big challenge is that, like you said, if we really wanted transformational change, rich people just need to pay their taxes,
right.
and that creates a lot of resources that could help us move things forward, and I would also say that as we move forward, as a community, I think in particular in the cities where Black folks are, and I'm glad that you mentioned this. You know, PSC, we did a story map on the history of racism and procurement and contracting in America, in particular in the federal government. And a lot of people don't understand how procurement and contracting was used to harm Black communities, especially from the federal government's perspective. So we have to be engaged in those conversations about government as relates to procurement and contracting, as well as public finance, right? So you
Right.
talk a lot too about tax increment financing, right? The primary tool that was used to grow the Beltline here in Atlanta, which is a multi-mile
Yeah.
loop in the heart of the city, which is now unfortunately facilitated gentrification, was through public financing, right? And so we also have to be present and not just pay our taxes, but also make sure that our taxes are being used to heal us and not harm us. And so tax policy and public finance is critical. One last question. Um, I realize, and then I'm gonna pass it off to Sade, before, and then we'll move into Q&A. So a lot of this book is awesome and great, and it was written before Trump's election. A lot of it was written before Trump's election.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would add or change now after you've seen the Trump administration and what what they've used to kind of what they've leveraged to kind of take some of our progress away and power away?
No, actually, the one thing it wasn't prescient, but I still hold on this. I also said in the last two paragraphs of the first of the intro, I think, I basically said that DEI and affirmative action have never been the goals. We're we're going to have to go beyond those things. Now, those things um, are eroding, if not taken away. And because I also knew that to a certain extent, we got comfortable with programs that were failing us. And and for me, I always wanted this to rally around some very basic things around a legislative agenda. Right now, so much of the civil rights um, um, legacy was built around executive orders. I mean, and not around policy and legislation. So I think in the aftermath of this second run, that's still true. We're going to have to
Mm,
fight for legislation because they are doing everything to have the right to discriminate. You
yeah,
know, and we're going to have to fight. But this is what the call is. I I'm growing more and more frustrated because this book has allowed me to do this, but I've been trying to get some of our electeds to do the same. We also have to give people something to fight for.
that's right.
Like, it's not just about going against this administration. What are we fighting for? Because, this is a sad reality. When people are starving, some of them will accept authoritarianism as a solution. And I'm like, even we got to do more. We got to say, here are the things that we want to give you. These are the things that are going to make your life live longer and fuller. And we just need to do a better job of that. That just fighting Trump is not it's not going to carry us at the end of the day. So for me, let's not just let's not just have a defensive strategy. Let's have an offensive one.
That's right.
Give
That's
us
right.
something to fight for. And
And,
we
and
will.
Trump is just an echo of a bigger
Yeah,
problem,
that's
right?
right.
He's a manifestation of something a lot bigger than him. And we have to understand that, and also understand which that side knows well, and we used to know, and we saw that through the Southern Freedom Movement, is that the change happens from the ground up, not the top down.
That's
Like
right.
we have to begin to change our communities brick by brick, block by block, community by community. And that is how, in my opinion, we get to Black power, not, you know, huge federal policies,
That's right.
because you can't legislate I say that we're in the age of what I call the neo-Confederacy, right? This is not about policy, really. This
Right.
is about a belief system, right, that refuses to die in America.
That's right.
And so that the only way that you can change that is from the ground up and not the top down, in my opinion. We are in a moral fight.
That's right.
That I think DEI and affirmative action and quotas attempted to articulate through the lens of capitalism and of the law, right? But it's deeper than that, right?
Deeper.
It's a lot deeper than that. And so we just gotta work together and move forward as a people. And I will end by saying, when we're free, Andre, everybody's free.
That's right.
And so that's why I think this book is really important, because it's not just about Black freedom.
Right.
It's about when we're free, everybody's free.
That's
And
right.
so, and that is the biggest lie that I think the other side is trying to tell us, is that the destiny of the nation is not tied to our destiny, as Black people, and that to me is the greatest lie. I cannot thank you enough, man, for making the time to hang out with me for a little bit. I'm so excited about the book, and excited about, um, the foundational kind of scaffolding that this book can provide. I definitely want to encourage people to read it. Any last words and final thoughts? Now, hopefully you can stick around because we got a little time for Q&A.
Yeah, I'm
But
gonna
I
stick
just didn't know if there was anything you wanted to share before I handed it off to Sade, and then she'll give her quick commercial, and then we'll come back to Q&A.
No, I will say this, that you've been a partner in this work. I wrote the book to pay homage to people like yourself
Mm.
who are doers. And I stay encouraged because I go from city to city and I see people like you doing it. And I just want to be able to show the evidence that they're having an impact, that in places like Atlanta, they're actually outperforming their predictive life expectancy. And it's not because it's just by happenstance, it's because somebody there is doing something good. And so for me, this is also to give you an applause. The people, because I see a lot of the doers on online right now in the chat. I want to give y'all all the flowers in the world, because when I present Black Power Scorecard in a live, I'll give a presentation and I'll invite the doers on the stage. And I'll say, look, this person's doing this concept. This person's doing this concept. This person doing this concept. Because we have them. We just need the investment. Nothing grows without investment. Um, but I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you. We got some good ones. I cheated a little bit and looked at some of them. But I'm gonna hand it off, and thank you, folks, for hanging in there with us. We wanted to make sure that you also had an opportunity to learn about the exciting work that we're doing, with Just Communities. And so I'm gonna hand it off to Sade, and then we'll be back.
Thank you. You got a doer on the stage now, Andre. Hey everyone, my name is Sade. I'm the director of Just Communities. Apologies, we usually do this intro at the beginning. I got stuck in traffic. For those of you that are in Atlanta, I'm sure you can relate. So I'm gonna keep this really, really brief. We really just wanted to tell you all what Just Communities is all about. Okay, so these are our values. Nathaniel was just talking about changing our belief system. So we always like to start our conversations by grounding them with our values. I'm not going to read them, but these are our values. We like to say that Just Communities is a bold reimagining of how communities grow. And next slide. This is our model. So we exist very basically to disrupt the way that development happens. Just Communities is a national initiative. We are trying to disrupt all of the racial disparities that Nathaniel and Dr. Perry were just talking about that are driven by the way that development is done, the acceleration of all our vulnerabilities to climate change. So the two pillars of our model are racial equity and climate resilience. We ask communities that we work with to make 22 commitments around those two pillars, and we've organized them into these areas of environment, opportunity, health, belonging, mobility. We break them down into actions that you can take, and those actions are organized into these phases: the groundwork, governance, roadmap, and implementation. So that is a very high level explanation of what we're all about, what our model is.
Longest relationship.
Next slide. And if any of that really interests you, you can take our accredited practitioners course. It's an online course that we offer live every quarter. I'm a faculty member. I saw some faculty in the audience. Shout out to you all. It's a really fun 2 days, very conversational, a lot of activities. And it's really designed for folks that are working in any field related to land use and development. So we have, community activists, organizers, developers, architects, urban planners, etc. And then after the course, you can take an exam, get accredited in our model, start applying it to your work, which is really the big vision. And then you get your accreditation renewed every 2 years by doing webinars like this. So this counts as a continuing education credit and a lot of other things that you're probably already doing. And then just a really quick plug for this webinar series that you all are participating in. Our speaker next week, or not next week, next month, is Paul Bachnight, a really innovative designer activist out of Minneapolis. So please come back for that. And you can get information about all of our programs at justcommunities.info. And I think that's it. Do we have any more? Oh, yeah. And then I was going to introduce y'all. So that was my commercial break. And now we can get back to the Q&A. Thank you all so much for indulging me.
Thank you for allowing us to share a commercial about Just Communities. I always say that, Just Communities is more than accreditation. It's more than about how we center land use and development in racial equity and liberation. It's a movement. And we're inviting you to be a part of this movement. And we hope that we will bring through the work of Just Communities uh, what is required for us to get together and really begin the process of solving some of the challenges that we're facing for the sake of our communities. So I'm gonna now move into some questions. So the first one is from Joe James. Dr. Perry, have you looked at the impact of highway pollution on Black communities which lie downwind on major highways?
Not specifically, but we do know air quality is a major contributor to or major drag on life expectancy. So in all forms, we are located in areas where air quality is worse. So that will be a factor.
Mhm. Next question from Kwasi. Hey, Kwasi, glad you're on the call, man. Um, is the current political climate in this current political climate with federal funds being cut, how do we address income disparities and inequities, particularly with the working poor, asset limited income constrained, employed families? I'm particularly interested in the role municipalities can play with budget constraints.
Yeah, we could be in for a difficult time. One of the reasons why I advocate for cooperatives is that we will have to work together. Our employers will have to hire people. Um, our housing, we're going to have to take on family members potentially that may be struggling. I'm a big proponent of cooperatives, but I just don't mean like formal cooperatives, in terms of like credit unions and
Hmm.
employee-owned firms, and we talked about shared equity models and community land trust. Well, but all those things will matter, so I just want to be clear. But um, part of the story of my life, a woman took me in when I was born. There was a deal made. At the time, my mother was 15 when she had my older brother, 17 when she had me. My father was not a nice man, and he also was a heroin addict. He was eventually murdered inside a prison, in Jackson State Prison, which is a prison outside of Detroit. And so the woman I call mom, her name is Elsie Boyd, she took in me, she took in my brother, she took in about 12 kids, and she's the closest thing I got, closest thing to God I know. But
Mm,
I also just want to be clear. She could do all this because she owned a home, and she
that's
could
right.
leverage that asset to benefit the community. Without question, when there's lower employment, there's going to be lower income tax. There's probably going to be lower property tax, and that's going to be less capacity for states and municipal governments to provide those services. We're going to have to provide those services.
Yeah, and I also think that it's going to be important in particular because as communities get poor, there will be certain segments of the community that'll get richer locally,
Yeah.
right? And so what is the role of local philanthropy? What is the role of individual giving as relates to partnering with municipalities and counties to move things forward? I totally agree with you around the cooperative piece, but that is who we are as Black people
Yeah,
anyway,
that's right.
right? I mean, it's not, it's individualism is not who we are, right? And
Right.
so whether it be around real estate or food, right? And I would also say, Kwasi, like how, having a business with one employer in the Black community is not enough, right? So how can cities play a role in scaling Black businesses
Hmm.
in ways that will allow Black businesses to hire other Black people? And I think that's one of the big challenges that we have in Atlanta is that we have a lot of they say that we're the mecca for entrepreneurship, but a lot of those businesses are run by one person, right?
Hmm.
I mean, how do we expand business? And I think that through public finance and support, that can happen. And then, of course, the question around housing affordability is another important place that municipalities can play a role in moving
One,
this forward.
one to your point, I don't want to gloss over this at all. That what if we're learning anything about this administration, they will pull every lever they can. We have power at the municipal level. We have to pull every lever we can to provide income and wealth to families.
That's
I
right.
mean, this is not the time to be playing games that or you're unsure how this will look to constituents. If you are a mayor, a city council person, um, whatever municipal, and there's a lever you can pull to um, to respond to the current environment, you have to pull it. So
That's good.
um,
That's
this
good. That's
we're
good.
in tough times.
And if you have elected officials that aren't pulling it, you need to move them out of the way
Yeah, that's right.
because they work for you. And I
That's
think
right.
I think the big challenge is, in particular, our economic development agencies, our development authorities, have been positioned in many ways to serve the private sector interests, right, through tax policy and other policies that incentivize jobs to come into communities where working people aren't usually positioned to receive them. And so how can you reimagine your development offices and your economic development offices in ways that put the people first? That is another important strategy that can be implemented. Another quick question. I'm curious about this person Nash about our thoughts on how the built environment can support holistic human thriving in addition to economic, education, equity policies. How can we design communities in a way to support community and people? I'll just say check out Just Communities, but I don't know if there's something else you want to add to that. So, you
Well,
know.
I see Yonina Gray. She's Atlanta based, and she's working with me on an HBCU initiative. One of the brightest minds in the community development space. Shout out to Yonina Gray, but she understands how we can leverage HBCUs in this during this time in terms of help, because in many places HBCUs are the default economic and community development agency in their neighborhood. And so we have to be more intentional about acquiring property, developing it, not just for the benefit of the HBCU, but for the community writ large. And so I think those strategies overall will be absolutely critical during this time because this is also, like you said, this is also a time to buy. People will buy. It's actually the individual investor who's actually buying stocks at this moment in time. Institutional investors are not.
Mhm.
They're actually selling. So, but this is also true. This is the time to buy commercial real estate. This is the time to buy that struggling church down the street. This is the time to buy and acquire because and develop it in ways that will provide the opportunities for others in the short and the long term. So I think again, shout out to Yonina Gray, but there are other strategies out there where people are doing place-based development projects
Right.
that are enhancing our community.
Yeah, and one other quick thing, I saw that there were, especially from one of my dear friends, Scott Bernstein, one of my old OGs who started the Center for Neighborhood Technology in
Yeah.
Chicago, asked about my comments about financial literacy, and I just wanted to be clear with people that I'm not saying that financial literacy is a bad thing. What I do feel is bad is when you teach people how to read and don't give them books. It's one thing to really help people to understand their financial circumstances, but if you're not working to shape the policies and the systems, if you, I'll just give another example. If you are positioning people to have good credit, but yet they still have to deal with a racist underwriting process, then it's still going to be very difficult for that person to truly benefit from what you're saying that you're trying to help that person do. So, yeah, I mean, financial literacy is important, but it's not enough. In particular, when you're dealing with communities that are dealing with deep, deep, deep structural inequity and racism.
And
We need
there's
more than
other
that. But go
there's a
ahead,
couple other
Andre.
points to this. The the wealth gap is not because white people are that much more financially literate. I mean, there were policies that designed that gave people more assets, particularly housing, during a period in which there was a housing boom, and those generations could pass on the benefits of that boom to future generations. Now, in this current period, black wealth is actually increasing, but white wealth is increasing at a phenomenal pace
Yes, yes.
because they're using their discretionary income to invest in the stock market. And so without that discretionary income, I don't care how smart you are, like it's going to be hard um, to elevate yourself. So it's not to discount financial literacy, but it is there's a much deeper root problem here. It is about the distribution of wealth and giving people the opportunity to build wealth. And like I said, you'd be surprised how literate someone becomes with an asset. So let's keep giving people the knowledge. Let's differentiate between knowledge and training, um, but give people the knowledge, give people the training, but give people the asset as well.
Yep, 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 yep. Um, Other thing, and I did want to make sure, I mean, we're both policy people. So there were some questions about some real examples of state and local policies that can truly add power to, well, they use the Black Power Index, but I'll just say the Black people. Are there some specific policies that, I mean, we've talked about some
Yeah, yeah.
policies, but are there some that you want to, lift up, that folks should be paying attention to?
Yeah, I'm so high on special purpose credit programs. Largely, special purpose credit programs are programs that are designed that will allow financial institutions to change their underwriting standards to provide loans to business and homeowners, mortgages and loans. And those programs it's not dead, but Trump is denying the Freddie and Fannie from acquiring those loans on the secondary market. But at the local level, CDFIs and other community facing banks can still leverage special purpose credit programs. And so my thing is we need to stop making them special, make them this mainstream uh, programs available to people for various reasons they don't have the wealth. We have thousands in every market, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who've done everything right, but they just don't have the down payment.
Right.
Literally they have been renting for decades, and in some cases generations, but never own. They can afford a mortgage. They just don't have the savings for the down payment. We need new products, and we have programs and initiatives. We need make those into policies. But I am very high on special purpose credit program, some level of automatic finance refinancing. During the refinancing boom, it was black and brown people who were least likely to refi,
Hmm.
largely because they were scared. They got into a mortgage. They're like, I'm not touching this. Blah blah. I've been burned before, and I get it. But when there are times and periods, you should refi and get the benefits of a lower interest rate. So I've been exploring automatic refinancing um, issues. So I'm glad we have a framework around SPCPs at Beneficial State Foundation. So there's lots of good work happening, but I'm a big fan of anything that recognizes that the wealth profile of families are not because of just their spending activities,
Right.
that it's because of past discrimination, where they've lived, a lot of other factors that contribute to it. And if you can create a product that recognizes that, then I'm all for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think all those are great. I mean, for me, it's going back to the old school, a procurement and contracting
Yeah,
policy
yeah,
on a municipal level could help to facilitate generational wealth. We're seeing it on the federal level with, Trump's family and other people.
yeah.
How can we use procurement and contracting locally to generate wealth, generational wealth, shared wealth in Black communities? And like you said, Andre, not just one family benefiting from it, but really create a policy where all people can benefit from it. The other piece to me, again, is about public finance.
Yep,
I
yeah,
think that public finance, in
that's right.
particular tax increment financing, with the right policies in place, could play a huge role in helping to facilitate the development of housing, affordable housing, local hiring, and other key things as it relates to green and gray infrastructure. Like tax or increment financing could play a big role. Another key thing that we were looking at in Atlanta was something called green infrastructure bonds. So how can you actually leverage bonds as well as a way
Right.
to facilitate workforce development? We were looking at actually doing a bond around green infrastructure in a way to help to facilitate parks, knowing that those parks will facilitate gentrification. How can we use those dollars to actually develop a workforce development strategy for folks in those communities so they can get paid and benefit from it? So the financial heft of municipalities and counties, I think, can really be leveraged in many ways, to move us forward, as a community. And again, definitely last but not least, but how can cities, counties, in particular, play a role in jumpstarting cooperative economic opportunities, whether it be around food or commercial development or housing. Like Andre said, we've got to start putting our little 5 and 10 cents together, in ways that will allow us to make it through these difficult times. Um, Let me see if there's anything else here. You see anything? Can you see the questions too?
Yeah, but I do have a hard
Okay.
stop
Yep.
at
We got 1 minute. So again, thank you all so much for calling in. This was a great conversation. You gave me an opportunity to see my friend for an hour.
Yeah.
So that was a good thing. And stay, buy the book, buy the book, buy the book. It's a great book. Join Just Communities and follow the Partnership of Southern Equity. And as I said before, regardless of what they do, we will win, y'all. Just keep the faith, and we're gonna be okay. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Bye bye.